He's Derek. She's Romaine. This is Derek and Romaine.
2.0, bitches! I always love that open, Derek. I don't know if it's just the joy in our voices when we're laughing or what, but it always puts a smile on my face.
You know,
Always.
America's favorite terrible cackles are back.
Yes, we are. Hello, everybody.
Hello. It's Derek. It's Romaine. It's a new year. Same old us. But hopefully you are enjoying. I mean, it's a little late for people to be like, oh, no, I'm still writing 2026 on things or 2025 on things. Even I don't even know what year it is. Well,
Girl, same.
we have a great show for you today.
Do we? I mean, yes, we do. We always have good shows for everybody.
There's only one way for everyone to find out. You just got to listen, and then you can make your judgment by the end. Or
Well, they're going to judge us all right.
Yeah, they really do, like every time.
Yep.
It's all right. Well, since it is a new year, I thought we would kick off with some new, I don't know, trends, I guess, is the only way to say it. You know,
Trends, eh?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, as you get, as you get out into the world over time, is my polite way of saying old, you get further and further away from the trendy things. And then you have to have things explained to you.
Right.
And then by the time it's explained to you, then that trend is already over.
Gotcha.
Like last year we had the 6'7" thing.
Ugh, God, I hated that dumb thing.
It was terrible. But
so
then,
stupid.
I saw a post from somebody who was like, oh, I tried to say 6'7" to my daughter. And she was like, that's so last year.
Oh, I love that.
I know. So these trends, they come, they go. But when I lived in Los Angeles, we, when you're in your 20s and be bopping around,
Yeah.
you're in the trend mix. But as soon as the LA Times would review the hot new club, it was like, well, that club is now over.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the same thing. As soon as the New York Times wrote about 6'7", it's like, by the time it trickles down into the New York Times newsroom, honey, that trend is so over.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
We need a new trend. But anyway, so here are some recent trends that I thought we would bring up and then discuss for ourselves if we think this trend is a good idea or if we're going to hop on this trend bandwagon or if we even care. Okay. So the first one is from our youthful pals in Gen Z.
Okay.
Apparently calling pain in the ass women Karen is out.
Oh, okay.
According to Gen Z, there is a new woman's name
Jessica.
that is the unbearable one, and it is Jessica.
Shut up. Tell me that's true. Oh, my
It
God.
is
Nothing
true.
would make me happier because that's my mortal enemy's name. I
know.
only have one mortal enemy in life, really, because most of them are dead. Except for that fat ass tree stump. But Jessica is my most mortal enemy of all enemies. And I hate her. I don't hate many people. There are very, very few people who I still harbor hatred in my heart for, but Jessica is one of them.
You've been holding on to this one for, frankly, a very
forever.
long time.
Forever. I will hold on to this until the day I die. That's how much I absolutely think this person is a vile, vile, horrible human being.
Didn't she steal your cat?
No. That was Caroline.
Okay.
No,
Well,
Jessica she was my arch nemesis in high school. And she's the one that really starting in fourth grade, I knew her my whole life, but starting in fourth grade, she made it her mission to make my life a living fucking hell. And she did it in a lot of ways. And I was probably just as horrible to her as she was to me, but it was really more out of retaliation than anything. But Jessica's one of those girls who thought she was so fucking great and perfect. She was like this super Christian girl, super smart girl, super talented girl. Like she just was and she was just a fucking cunt of a human being.
Wow.
And I absolutely hate her. If I saw her today, it would be very hard for me not to punch her in her stupid punchable face.
Hard.
In fact, this might be the reason why I have never gone back to any of my class reunions, because she will inevitably be there. And inevitably, I'm going to want to punch her in her very punchable face.
Isn't she the one, though, who arranged for the
Yes.
last reunion to be on a weekend you couldn't attend?
That is correct.
Well,
But this year she's not. They have kicked her off the planning committee.
Oh.
She's no longer allowed to plan the reunions.
is this your year?
This is I am going to go back this year. I've already talked to you about it. But yes, in July, they're having my 30th class reunion. I'm going back this year.
30?
Yeah. It'll
That's
be 30
horrifying.
years. It is horrifying. But I am going back because my friend Emily, remember I saw her when we were in Hawaii. My friend
Yes.
Emily asked me, she's like, I've been tasked with asking you to come to the class reunion. And I said, I will only come to the class reunion, one, if you come, and two, if we make sure to invite some of the misfit kids that I know are not normally invited. And so she promised me that we would do that. And so I said I would come this year.
My next high school reunion is coming up. And, previously we had our high school reunion at the Pasadena Hilton. And
Yeah.
then we had a reunion on the Queen Mary. And the next one is going to be in a cemetery. Okay.
Oh, well, that's sad. I mean, it happens, but
It
sad.
could happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Remembrances of things past.
Yeah,
Okay.
Well,
I wish you the best of luck. Now,
Thank
how do
you.
you feel about Jessica, though? I mean, I guess you're on board because you already hated Jessica. Do you think that people are actually going to start calling women who act out at supermarkets with
I mean, I
uncomfortable
feel like
haircuts at
Karen is
Jessica?
so ingrained that it will be really hard to change it. But I'm not adverse to changing it to Jessica because, well, for all the reasons I've already stated. But yeah, I mean, when I don't know that I could just say it Jessica because I always called Jessica Cow growing up because she
Whoa.
was because I hated her so much. And so I'm all for it. I think Jessica as the new Karen is it's great. I literally threw Jessica out there hoping that was true. I didn't actually know the answer. So the fact that what I had hoped was true is actually true might be a sign of good things to come. I don't know. But fuck the Jessicas of the world. I'm kidding. There's a lot of Jessicas I love. Don't get me wrong, Jessicas. I have plenty of Jessicas I love, but I still will always remember that fucking Jessica Allen and what a cunt she was.
it was such a personal opinion from Romaine Patterson.
Yes. Oh, yeah. No, it's totally a personal opinion.
Now, I wonder how much of this is a generational shift because, names themselves are generational names. We think about names as like old people names.
Right.
And what we call an old people name changes over time as there are, new old people.
Right.
When I was a kid, Pauline was an old lady name. And honestly, it probably still is. But you know what I mean? Like there were very specific old lady names. And then there were young lady names. For the baby boomers, Meryl Streep talked about this, about how she hated her name, Meryl. And she wished that she had a popular girl name when she was in high school as a baby boomer, which was like Patty and Kathy and Tammy, things like that.
Right.
And now, I mean, there are not a lot of Patty, Kathy, Tammys that are, teenagers. And so I wonder if like Karen is such an old lady name now to kids,
Right.
that to them, a middle-aged woman is a Jessica, not a Karen, because a Karen is an old woman. And also, as you know from your own experience around the house, that a younger generation likes to make things their own. And so they reject things of their parents' generation
Oh, yeah, totally.
because they don't want to co-sign. And sometimes, they come around to it. Like whatever their parents were into, they're like, you know what? Turns out my parents were into something cool. But, at the time I didn't want to acknowledge it because, I wanted to be so different from them.
Right.
I'm sure that you hope, because your daughter is very like anti-sex, which is indicative of her generation.
Yes.
But you know what? Honestly, sex can be real fun. And it is the kind of thing that I think that many people in her generation will eventually come around to.
Of course they will.
Because honestly, an orgasm is a good way to pass the time.
Yeah, and it feels good too.
So I think that, but also when you're younger, you're not good at sex. You don't really know what you want. And so sex is not a great experience. Like it definitely gets better.
Do you know-
Sex is the kind of thing that gets better in your 30s.
You know what I also think
when
impacts,
you know yourself better.
What I also think impacts young people and sex? Sexual assault. I think that young people like Romy's age are so much more aware of sexual assault and things of that ilk than my generation was. Like there's so many TV shows that focus on it, so many TikToks that talk about it, like these true crime podcasts and all these other things talk about sexual assault so much more that I think that is a big part of why young women in particular, I think, just don't want to have sex. I think they just don't want to make themselves susceptible to a sexual assault, which sounds crazy. But I think when you are so aware of how prevalent they can be, it definitely makes you think twice.
I mean, obviously, sexual assault can absolutely happen within the context of an otherwise sexy time.
Right.
But the reality of sexual assault is that it's more likely to happen in a situation, I think, that is not a sexy time situation. And so in some ways, but it may just be, sort of a fear of being physically vulnerable.
Yes.
And having sex with another person, you are physically vulnerable to that person.
Mm-hmm.
But this is also why, having sex with somebody that you know and trust is better. You can really be yourself, be more uninhibited. And so I would imagine that there is a certain amount of, well, I don't want to put myself in that kind of vulnerable space. But I have to think that there is a real push-pull of the everyone is so distant because you don't see people in person because you're always in like social media or like connecting online or whatever, right? And so you're sort of yearning for an actual in-person connection, but at the same time, you're very wary about too much physical intimacy.
Right.
And so that's a terrible push-pull dynamic. And you remember whatever the 15, 20 years ago when, young people were into these like cuddle parties, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was just like, we'll all just like a bunch of us will just pile on a bed together and just lay around. And it's not sexy. We're all just like physically intimate in a cuddle puddle. And I don't know, maybe these young people should bring back the cuddle puddle, frankly.
Oh, the cuddle puddle. I mean, I will say, like, Romy's generation is very interesting when it comes to intimacy because, like, Romy is very intimately connected with her close girlfriends. Like, physically, they are very physical with each other. They hold each other's hands. They sit very close to each other. They cuddle with each other. Like, they sleep in the same beds and cuddle with each other. There is a different level of intimacy with them than, like, my generation. We never did shit like that. That would have been weird. But Romy's generation, they're all about touchy-feely, lovey-dovey bullshit.
All you wanted in high school was for the girls to want to have a sleepover and cuddle with you.
I'd have been in fucking heaven. What are you talking about? I've been like, hello, ladies. Yes. Yes, please.
But I think every generation sort of expresses itself, its sexuality, its intimacy, whatever else. But like in the gay male community,
yeah,
intimacy is a real challenge.
Why do you think that is?
Well, in general, men have a hard time with intimacy in general. I mean, I think if you ask straight ladies, they would tell you that like men struggle with intimacy also.
Right.
And so when you get two men together, you're just more likely to have at least one of them have issues with intimacy. But also, gay men in general are very focused on the exterior more than the interior.
Sure.
And I know that that's like a, painting men with a broad brush, but I think, on balance, they're more directed by the exterior than the interior compared to women, on sort of a sliding scale.
Right.
But also being focused on the outside of a person and not the inside of a person also makes intimacy difficult because you don't want anything that is going to disrupt the facade that you like.
Right.
This was kind of the thing when we'd have porn stars on the show and then they would talk about like, oh, I have 10 cats and I want to become a real estate agent. It's like, that's not what people want to hear about.
Right.
You know, they see you as a sex object. They want to hear that you have a sexy life. Not that having 10 cats and being a realtor can't be sexy,
Yeah.
ladies. But you know what I mean. Like they want to hear that they're constantly having sex and constantly being sexy and, you know, whatever, because that's part of the fantasy. And I think that it makes intimacy difficult if you're just very focused on the exterior. But then again, you know, so much of meeting and connecting is through apps where people are only provided very surface information about you. So therefore, you have to put your best facade forward. And it really is counterproductive to intimacy. So it was already a challenge when you were meeting people in bars.
Right.
At least when you met somebody in a bar and you were flirting with them, you could have a certain amount of physical intimacy with them.
Right. Yeah.
You know, touch them and whatever else and like get a little closer. Don't be shy. But online, you don't even get that. So you can't even have like a chemistry read with a person, as they call it in the biz, because you can't really tell what that is. So it is a real challenge. And I don't, in some ways, I every generation does this like, well, in the old days, it was so much better. It was so much easier. And it wasn't better or easier. It was just different.
Right.
Because if you were a small town gay somewhere and you wanted to find another gay person, there was no intimacy in a bar to meet somebody and whatever else, blah, blah, blah. But the internet has transformed being a small town gay.
Oh, yeah.
And your ability to connect and find other gay people and whatever. So even though you're missing the sort of big city, the critical mass of being able to meet and hang out with gay people in person, for people who live in smaller communities, the internet and social media has absolutely transformed people's ability to be gay. Right. But you have a trade-off, right?
Right.
You have less opportunity to see people in person and connect and build intimacy that way. So, it's just different. It's not better or worse in the aggregate. It's just, it's just kind of different. But speaking of dating trends, Romaine.
Yes.
There are some new trends in dating. One is that among young people, the in-person dating hot new trend is hot take dating.
I don't even know what the fuck that means.
Okay. So this actually...
I'm so far removed from dating. That might be part of it.
Well, you never know. You might be on the market again. Let's see how 2026 goes.
You never know.
You never know. But, okay, so the conventional wisdom with dating has been to basically put your best foot forward and not talk about controversial topics. Like what previously they had said, you don't talk about religion and politics.
Right.
Religion is less and less of a factor in everyday life.
Because less and less people are practicing religion.
Well, younger people, younger dating people are just not religious. And so, but politics is obviously really polarizing. I think politics is actually more polarizing now for dating than it used to be. They've been doing surveys for years of like, how willing are you to date or marry somebody who you disagree with politically? Oh, and but like now it's like virtually nobody. Right. Especially women. Women are infinitely less likely now to date or marry a man or woman that they differ with politically than they used to.
I think it just creates so many problems.
It can, but that's the thing, is that in the olden days, politics was not as
divisive,
constant. Well,
right.
No, I think it was always divisive, but it was not. You weren't constantly reminded of it. And a lot of it was most people lived in an area where most people in their area agreed with them politically. Whatever the issues were for them were extremely local, right. To your little town. And I live in a smaller town. You lived in a smaller town. And obviously there are big important things that happen nationally in politics and whatever else. But the reality of day-to-day life in your town tends to be pretty local issues that are not necessarily all that partisan. It's why a lot of towns don't even have partisan elections for mayor or city council or whatever else. A lot of places don't, because the issues are about, water infrastructure and roads getting plowed and, new construction and, that kind of stuff. It's not, how good or bad are the schools, which is not necessarily a political issue. Everyone in town wants better schools or good schools. So, what are the solutions to make that happen, right?
Right.
And that's not necessarily overtly political, although sometimes there are people who are like, well, if we don't have trans athletes and we don't talk about gay people, then our schools will be better. But the vast majority of people are much more focused on the quality of the teachers that they have, the curriculum, the equipment that the school has.
Right.
What programs does the school offer that could, enrich the students' education. So anyway, but with hot take dating, the idea is to, on your first few dates, to be very forthcoming about what your hot takes are on various things in the world. So that if somebody really disagrees with you, you could tell the deal breaker early on.
That's interesting. I kind of like that, actually. I would want to know early on before I get too invested in someone if I'm going to totally hate them.
Yeah. I think that's especially if there's just something that you feel is going to be a deal breaker.
I mean, these days there's so many things I think that I would see as a deal breaker that perhaps I wouldn't have a while back. Like once upon a time in my life, I could have dated someone who was more conservative than me, not necessarily completely on the opposite end of the spectrum, but more conservative. I don't think I could do that now, given where we are in the world. And the way things are. Like there are certain social issues that if you were opposite of me, I probably would not be able to date you for. Just because on a moral level, I wouldn't be able to.
But do you yourself think that you have drifted to the left over time as an adult?
I wouldn't. I think I was
when
always.
You say somebody more conservative than you, do you mean somebody who was as conservative as perhaps you were?
Yeah, I mean,
20, 30 years ago versus
because I've always been a little conservative, right? Like I'm not fully liberal. Like I believe in the right to bear arms. Like there's things that conservatives really stand for that I also can agree with. I don't necessarily, but they're very few and far between these issues, right? Whereas I'm definitely more left leaning. But like to me, 30 years ago, something like, immigration didn't really matter to me. I didn't think much about it. I definitely think about it more now. And part of why I think I'm thinking about it now is because I'm watching what's happening to people who have immigrated to this country legally, and the atrocities that are happening makes me care that much more about their protections and their safety and things like that. Plus, I now have friends who have come to this country through legal means, who have either become citizens or gotten green cards or whatever. And so I now am more invested in that topic than I maybe once was. Like things like that. Like, I've never been one who ever thought if I ever needed one, I wouldn't get an abortion. I think that the likelihood of that is very, 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 very unlikely. But I've always been pretty, woman's right to choose. But I'm even more so now, especially when those rights are threatened. It makes me dig down into that issue even deeper, I think. So I do, in some ways, I think my response to what is happening in society has, kind of made me dig in a little bit deeper to my beliefs and thoughts on certain issues, where once upon a time I just didn't put a lot of thought into them. I definitely, as I get older, I put more thought into those things. And,
that's probably a big part of the internet and social media, to come back to that, because,
sure.
There's been a lot of talk about, the public opinion of marriage equality have changed dramatically in 30 years, right?
Yeah.
Or gays in the military or whatever, like just in general, gay rights, it just skyrocketed in terms of acceptance and popularity. But I would argue that it's not necessarily that the world changed or that all the old homophobes died off or anything else. I think it was a case of there were a lot of straight people who didn't give it a lot of thought.
Right.
And then once they saw gay people getting married and everything was fine and gays in the military and everything was fine or whatever, then they were like, okay, I'm in support of this because this has not impacted my life and everything is fine.
Right.
And so, because I feel this way sort of about, gender rights in general and transgender rights and issues around people of color. It's not that my opinion about any of these things have changed, but the more I have seen and heard, the more engaged I am on it.
Right.
And the more I am in favor of equality in these areas. Now, if you had, honestly, if somebody had said, are you 35 years ago, if somebody had said, how do you feel about trans people, whatever, I would have been like, honestly, I don't think about it at all.
Right.
Like, not at all. Like, where are these trans people? I mean, even Chaz Bono said that they came out as trans, initially came out as lesbian because they didn't even know what trans was or know any trans people. And when they did, they were like, oh, that's me. And so I think that for a lot of people, even, big city connected in the gay community people, we're not just giving a lot of thought to the trans community.
Right.
And then now we are. And the more I think that people know about trans people, they're like, oh, I am more interested in supporting their rights because, I'm more, I now know more. And so now I'm more engaged. And so to me, that's ultimately what woke is. And I feel bad for people who have gotten more information and they're like, don't tell me anything. I don't want to know any more information. Like, okay, well, then feel free to continue to be stupid. But for the rest of us who have, gotten more information about things, then and have accepted the information that we have received, it's like, okay, and I will use an example, reparations. Initially when there was a conversation about reparations and everything, and I was like, a lot of the talking points are, well, slavery was, 150 years ago, and how, what would be an equitable number, and how exactly would this work, and whatever else. A lot of logistical problems with it, and who's going to pay for it, or whatever else, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? I actually spent some time reading up about reparations and sort of the where, why, and how. And honestly, I found the arguments persuasive. And also, I think that the dollar numbers that have been thrown out for reparations are actually low compared to probably the amount of money that's actually due people. And so, but it can't, I had to seek this out because it's not reparations is on the evening news every night or something.
Right.
We're not being bombarded with this as information. You kind of, if you want to know more, you have to seek it out. But certainly, my opinion, I don't know that I want to say that it changed. I just have now formed an opinion.
Right.
My opinion is I am in favor of it. But I also understand people listening who have not dug into this issue going, I don't know, it seems crazy to me. I get that. But it's also worth digging into the pro arguments to see, because the con arguments are, as every progress movement in America has had, oh, it's too expensive and we shouldn't change the status quo because it'll just ruin things for the people who have now. And you know what? That's a bullshit argument, because that was the argument against marriage equality, was the argument against integration, been the argument against, all these things. Oh, no, redlining is great. Look how nice these suburbs are. We don't want to change this. You'll just ruin the suburbs. They're always, you have to hold on to what you have, because any change will, make it so you don't have what you have.
It's going to destroy it.
Right. And it's just, that's a shitty argument. You have to keep people oppressed in order for you to have your half a cookie. All right, well, that's a terrible reason to have half a cookie.
Right. You don't need a fucking cookie, fatty.
Yeah. But anyway, so I agree with you. I actually think the hot take dating, to pull it back, I think the hot take dating is actually not a terrible idea, just because you are more likely to find out early on before you get too invested whether or not this is going to work.
Yeah, because I mean, and part of it is, I think, as a culture and a society, the lines of division are getting deeper. And I don't necessarily love that. I mean, I think it sucks in a lot of ways, right? Because my whole life, let's use religion as an example. My whole life, religion has been used against me as a weapon, right? Because I'm gay, because I'm a woman. Like, there's so many reasons why religion can be used as a weapon against me. And I'm not a religious person. I have spirituality, but I'm not what I would call a religious person. And I don't particularly like a lot of organized religion because I feel like it is used to persecute other people. And 99.9% of the time, it is not even justifiable the way that it is used. And so I have a lot of problems with organized religion. But I've always had the stance. If you are a person of faith and you are a part of a religion, that's great. I love that for you. I think that's wonderful. I don't want to tell you you shouldn't. I'm never going to tell you you shouldn't be a part of a religion, even if it's not a religion I agree with. As long as we can be respectful of one another. If you can respect me and my lack of religion over here, and I will respect you and your religion over there. That's the way I wish the world was, where we can have our differences and we can still be respectful and still treat each other well and not be horrible pieces of shit to one another. Like, even with politics, I would love it if we lived in a world where you can be a Republican, I can be a Democrat. We may disagree on some topics, but we can still be friends. We can still be kind to one another. We can still be gracious to one another. We can still be respectful of one another. And the differences that we have are just differences we have, and that's okay. Unfortunately, that is not the world we are living in anymore. That the idea of the golden rule has completely flown out the window. I don't feel like anyone lives by that rule anymore. Now it's, if you don't agree with me, I fucking hate you. And it makes me sad because that's not the world I want to live in. I would much rather live in the golden rule world. But we're just getting further and further away from that, which just sucks.
Yeah, that's how it is. Now, speaking of straight dating, all right, here's another one.
Yes.
So a single mom on TikTok has gone viral.
Okay.
Because she has created a new dating app.
Oh, okay.
Called Courted.
Okay.
And the way the Courted app works is, if you want to go on a date with her or someone like her, you have to provide money to cover her date prep expenses.
Oh, come on.
So like makeup and a new dress or shoes or whatever it is, blah, blah, blah.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Because then that bitch also expects you to pay for the date.
Yeah.
So basically, you have to pay for me to get ready to go on a date with you, and then you have to pay on the date for you, and you're still not going to get laid.
Yeah, well, I mean, basically what she's created is prostitution.
But also, I'd understand if she said, hey, listen, you want to go on a date with me? She's a single mom, right? If you want to go on a date with me, okay, but you have to help pay 50% of my babysitting. If it was something reasonable like that, so that she doesn't have to incur a huge expense to go on a date with you, I would understand something like that. But this idea of, my time is valuable. My look is valuable to you. If you want this, you have to pay for it, I think is absolute bullshit. Because then it's not even about chivalry or romance. Now it's about you've made it into a transaction. Exactly. You've turned it into prostitution, and that's just gross.
Now, hilariously, so you know how I've been watching TCM and catching up on old movies. And one of the old movies that I watched recently is a movie that was actually pretty good with Ginger Rogers called Kitty Foyle. And anyway, in the movie, she is a young girl from the wrong side of the tracks in Pennsylvania, and a rich mainline guy, played by handsome Dennis Morgan. Oh, he's so hot. And he falls for her. But of course, she's from the wrong side of town, and his family is wealthy and old money and doesn't approve. And so they have kind of a push-pull of like, are they going to be together, whatever. Meanwhile, she has a impoverished but also very handsome young doctor who has the hots for her. And doesn't seem to mind that she's in love with somebody else and wants to be with her anyway. And anyway, but in the movie, they have like a little preamble, like at the beginning of the movie where they talk about where it starts in 1900. And the movie takes place in 1940. But it starts in 1900. And they're like, and in the beginning, here's how it was for women. And it's a woman gets on like a streetcar. And as soon as she gets on, with her bustle and her parasol, like the streetcar is filled entirely with men. And all of them stand up when she enters. And one of them gives up his seat for her very gallantly. And she sits down. And then he starts courting her. Like sitting on her front porch while her father's inside, like playing a ukulele for her, whatever. And then she agrees to marry him and they all live happily ever after. Okay. And then, but then they're like, but women weren't satisfied. And so then they show the suffrage movement where now she's married, but picketing for the right to vote.
Right.
And they're like, and now 40 years later, women are equal. Wait.
Okay, yeah.
So then they cut to, and it's Ginger Rogers, and she's on a subway, and the subway is packed with men, and no one is looking at her, and no one is giving up a seat for her. And one seat opens up, and she goes to sit in it, and another man like pushes past her, like shoves her to get into the seat. And it's like, this is the world you wanted, ladies, full equality. Anyway.
As if it was full equality.
Right, exactly. I'm like, oh, okay. So because we have the right to vote now, like you just have the right to be dicks to us all the time. Oh, what a great system.
Yeah, and it's still not full equality. We still don't make the same amount of money, even today.
Yeah. But also, the fact that, like, because it happens now today on the subway, like a pregnant woman will get on the train and like some people will not give up their seat.
Nope. It always makes me so fucking mad.
I agree. Or somebody who is old.
Yeah,
and they have
oldies
signs
and
up,
pregnant ladies should always get priority seating. I don't care. Get your fat ass up and let them sit down.
But also, the oldest person on the train should not be standing.
Nope.
Unless they want to stand. Like, I'm sorry. Like, yes, you should get up. I know these trips are long and whatever, and you're tired. Everybody's tired. But you know what? That person is fucking 90 years old. Let them sit down if they want to sit down.
Yeah,
they won't be around that much longer.
Don't be a dick.
Yeah. So anyway, the idea of like, I think tying society's coarseness to fights for equality is bullshit.
Agreed.
Because I think if you actually asked women in 1900, they would tell you that there were plenty of men who were garbage people back then.
Yes, men have always been garbage people.
And
I'm
also,
sorry,
like,
for all time. I don't know that men have never not been garbage people.
Yeah.
No offense, Derek, and to all of our
you.
male listeners out there. I don't, and I think part of it is, I think men have just been allowed for so long to just feel like they're superior. They're the superior sex. Women have allowed this, by the way. And I say this because I really do believe women, if they really wanted to, women could take back their power fully if they wanted to. And you know what it would be a simple act. Stop having sex with men. If all women of the world stopped having sex with men and refused to have sex with men, I honestly believe you would start to see some change. Now, the problem with that is, of course, that then there are some men who are like, oh, I'm going to have sex with you. And then they're going to forcefully have sex with women because they're assholes. And then the women are going to have to gang up on him.
Yeah. The problem is we already have like an incel problem where we have a whole generation of young men who are, involuntarily celibate, which is what incel means, which means nobody wants to have sex with them. Now, I would argue that, people might want to have sex with you if you took care of yourself and had a better personality and didn't have shitty viewpoints. Like, I don't know, maybe
or
being
got
a better
a job
person.
and moved out of your parents' fucking house.
Yeah, maybe being a better person would get you laid. That's my first thought. But also, women do have other options and choices and interests.
Yeah.
And they don't have to settle for a man just because it's a shameful embarrassment to be a single woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so that calculus has changed. And so, yeah, that means that men who didn't have to compete that hard before have to compete a lot harder.
Right.
And that means they got to step up their game.
Yep.
And so in one way, I respect this woman because she is trying to rebalance the power here in a way.
Yeah, but that's it. She's swung the pendulum too far.
Well, to me, I think the problem is what kind of man are you going to attract?
Right. A man is going to treat you
this?
like an object that they paid for.
Right. And then what power and agency do you have then if you're just a trophy that can be purchased?
Right.
And so I don't know that this is great. But then again, as Lorelei Lee says in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, a woman being pretty is like a man having money.
Right.
Sure, you can date a poor man, but isn't it better to date a rich one?
Yes.
Sure, you can date somebody who's unattractive, but isn't it better to date somebody who is attractive? Everybody has their own, sort of stack of commodities here that they are offering on the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
At whether it is looks or money or sense of humor or, whatever it is, location, a great apartment, different people have different commodities that they are offering. And sometimes, somebody has more to offer. Okay. But ultimately, I think this is where it comes down to you got to be able to make a connection with another person. Like that's where it really matters. And if somebody has to pay, I just think if somebody has to pay for whatever, your hair and makeup in order to go on a date with you, then you have to always be that person.
Right.
Whatever it is.
But also, I mean, I just like the expectation is that men already have to pay for the date. Like, because, I deal with this with Romy sometimes, right? So, like, Romy has all these boys who are courting her, who want to date her. And she's like, listen, if you want to date me, you have to pay for our date. You have to show up. She has certain rules that you have to follow in order to date her. One of the rules is you have to meet my moms. Like, they have to meet you and approve of you before we're allowed to go out on a date, which honestly I love because, we're in a different place. And I think at the very least, I want to be able to look at the boy who's taking my daughter out on a date. So if I have to identify him later to a police officer, I can. But also, I think Romy's a good judge of character, but I still want to meet them. But then, she's like, yeah, if you want to take me on a date, I will happily go on a date with you, but I will pay, or you will pay, unless she goes on a date and she feels like the date is not going anywhere. And then she offers to pay her half because she's like, you know what? I'm probably not going to go on another date with you. And it's not fair to make you pay for this date. Like she makes that decision. She doesn't tell them necessarily that that's what she's doing, but I know that that's what she's doing because we've talked about it. So she has a whole compass of how she navigates this stuff. And I think her compass is pretty good. I think she puts a lot of thought and consideration into it. And she's respectful of the fact that she knows what the value of money is, right? She knows that to take a girl on a date is not cheap. And these guys have to work to take her out on a date. And if the date is going well, and then they can pay it and they, or whatever. And sometimes she'll go on the next date. She'll pay for it. So I think that you kind of have to have realistic and fair expectations when it comes to this stuff. And I think expecting someone to pay for your outfit, expecting someone to pay for your hair, your makeup, and that's just ridiculous. Well, I would never do it personally. I'd be like, you're too high maintenance.
Right. Now, she is a single mother. Now, if somebody wanted to date somebody with a kid and they volunteered to pay for a babysitter.
Great. That is a very kind gesture.
I think that's a different thing.
Yes.
I think if it's like, look, I know, there is definitely a sunk cost. And also, you have time away from your kid.
Right.
And so, yes, if I wanted to date somebody and they had a kid, I would be, it's like, look, how about we split the cost of the babysitter, or I pay for the babysitter, whatever. One, I think it shows I'm committed to you as a person who is a parent.
Yep.
And also, I am recognizing the realities that you don't have the same kind of freedom that I have to just leave the house.
Right.
And so I'm acknowledging that. Like, I think I think that would be fine.
But also it says, I don't expect you to take on this very large expense on your own so you could spend time with me. Because here's the thing. Babysitting is fucking expensive.
Right.
I think I told you this a while back, but like Romy, when she used to babysit for our neighbors, Tom and Sarah, now they have 3 kids. When she would babysit for them to go on a date night, she would come home with anywhere from $60 to $120 so that they could go out on a date night. That's not even counting the money they spent on their date. So, for a single parent with, let's say, one child, that's a pretty big expense when you already have a lot of very high expenses just related to being a single parent. So I definitely think something like that shows a lot of respect, and I think that's a very different scenario. But this whole, you have to pay for me to get a new outfit. Fuck that shit. No, sorry. I'd be like, I would see that as a red flag, because if she expects that, what else is she going to expect of me? She's going to expect me to pay for this, and she's going to expect me to pay for that. And then I'm just a fucking wallet. I'm not even a person she wants to date. She's just going to use me to get all the things that she wants. I would absolutely, that would be such a red flag for me.
Red flag.
Unless I'm one of those kind of people that really love spoiling someone, because there are people like that.
Yes.
There are people who love being able to do for others and to spoil others, and they are of means and they can do that. If you're one of those kind of people, great, more power to you. But I think it should be something you're volunteering, not necessarily the expectation. I think the expectation is what I find gross about this woman's situation.
Yeah. Also, I mean, it would be different if he bought her a gift or something, flowers or something nice or whatever. Or if because this came up on Sex and the City, of like, oh, I want to go to this fancy thing.
Right.
Let me buy you a fancy dress, because you wouldn't otherwise need to have a
Sure.
fancy dress for whatever this fancy thing is.
Yeah, that's fair.
And this happened on Sex and the City when Miranda had a fancy work thing, and Steve didn't have a suit.
Yep.
And she was like, let me buy you a suit.
I've done that before.
And he was very uncomfortable about that on the show. And part of it is because she had money and he didn't.
Sure.
And it was a power dynamic of a woman with money and a man who did not have money. And anyway, and so in some ways that's different. But I think, if you want to take somebody to some kind of fancy black tie thing,
yeah,
that is totally voluntary on your part. But if you want to take them and they don't have money, you should be willing to rent them a tuxedo or, get them a dress or whatever it is to go to that event. So they are not embarrassed.
Right. I've done that. Because in my life, there have been occasions where I've had to go to black tie events and I've wanted to take a date with me, and, we were young or whatever. They didn't have the money to buy a new dress or whatever. And I have absolutely gone out and bought a nice dress for a girl I was dating so she could attend an event with me. And I didn't think anything of it because I wanted her there. And that was a price I was willing to pay to have her with me at that event. That seemed a reasonable price to pay.
These money dynamics are just very different in a gay couple.
Oh, yeah. They can
just because there is not an expectation that one person is going to be the breadwinner and then the other one is going to, be a stay-at-home person.
I mean, honestly, I it's funny because when Iris and I first got into our relationship, I was definitely more of a breadwinner than she was. But she made quite a bit of money, but, I made more. And in some ways, our relationship dynamics have shifted in different ways throughout, back and forth throughout the years. And I'm always grateful. I'm always happy. I think I'm the happiest when I'm not the moneymaker, when I don't feel the pressure of being the one that has to bring in the big check. It's kind of nice to not carry that responsibility in a relationship. I'm more than happy to let Iris be the breadwinner.
But you know what? It's so funny. This is something where you and I are very much aligned. And part of it is both of us are very independent.
Yeah.
We knew what we wanted our life to be. And, we walked away from other parts of our life to make the life that we wanted happen. You left Wyoming, I left Los Angeles. And it's like, this is my dream and this is what I want to make happen. And I'm going to make it happen for myself. And so we are very independent people. And I am sure that there are lots of people like that who are like, I want to be in total control of whatever, X, Y, and Z. But you and I are exactly the same here. If I date somebody who is more famous than I am, richer than I am, but has a bigger personality, I do wonderful, great, bring it on. Like that doesn't bother me. And part of it is because I, and I think that you have the same thing, but like for me, like I don't have anything left to prove here.
Yeah.
I already have made good money in my life. I've already, checked a lot of boxes on things that I wanted to accomplish. So if somebody else wants to accomplish something, that's great. Go right ahead. I think that's terrific. But I also think that the, reverse side of that is it can be, if you are a successful person and they are less successful, because this happened with Jonathan, is that it is intimidating. They're going to feel like they are in your shadow.
Right.
Because Jonathan always felt in my shadow, which was insane because, he had a fancy degree from Johns Hopkins and he had, 2 or 3 Emmy Awards. Part of it was he just never felt good about himself and successful in himself. But, it didn't bother me at all. I'm like, win all the Emmys you want, make all the money you want. Like this is not a barrier for me. But the fact that I owned a house and he had a shitty apartment when I met him, his apartment was terrible. But that embarrassed him of I want to be the one with the nice house and not the shitty apartment. I'm like, well, someday you will have a nice house. Turned out he never did. But he did have a better apartment later. But, even still, that dynamic didn't bother me, but it sure bothered him.
Yeah.
But you can't do anything about that. But yeah, I'm with you. Like if somebody else wants to be the breadwinner, great.
God, I welcome it. Honestly, I would fucking welcome it.
Doesn't bother me at all.
I've always said, let me be a kept woman. Nothing would make me
Right.
happier. Oh God, honestly.
Yeah.
Some rich old lesbian wants to come and sweep me off my feet. I consider me swept. I'll leave everything behind. Bye, Iris. Bye, Romy. Bye, all the pets. Goodbye.
I will also consider a rich old lesbian as well. That's fine for me.
Yeah. Nothing would make me happier. Honestly.
That's right.
Oh, that made me so happy.
Well, speaking of rich old gays, I know for a while now you've wanted to talk about Marc Jacobs.
Oh my God. So all right, let's see. Where do I want to start with Marc Jacobs? Okay, so let's start with Angelyne. So Derek, you know who this is because you lived in Los Angeles for a long time. So I'm going to let you explain to listeners who never have heard of her who she is.
Not Evangeline. You mean Angelyne?
Angelyne. I don't know where I came with Evangeline, but yes, Angelyne, the Billboard star.
Yeah, so Angelyne is a woman who became famous in Southern California in the early to mid 80s because she was a budding young actress with a pink convertible. And she, billboards went up all over Los Angeles, basically saying available to work as an actress with a phone number. And the billboards were everywhere in Los Angeles. There were a bunch of them. And of course, everyone was intrigued because it was pre-internet. So it's like, who is this woman who has these billboards up? And around the same time, there was a guy named Dennis. Oh, crap, I wish I could remember his last name. But he had a car with crazy things welded onto it. And he also was like, I'm an actor for hire. And he would just drive around Los Angeles. So you would see his crazy car. And so if you watch the movie Volcano, in the movie Volcano, a version of his crazy car gets swept up in the lava, and her a thing of molten lava goes through her billboard and everything.
Right.
Because they were such ingrained in Los Angeles. And somebody did a documentary a few years ago about Angelyne and her life.
Oh my God, it was the best documentary too.
It was a great documentary, and she's a fascinating person.
Oh yeah, fascinating.
And yeah, it's and she just drives around in her pink convertible. And if you want a picture with her, you have to pay. And she has photos.
She has merch in the trunk of the
in her
convertible.
Trunk,
yeah, it's
you
awesome.
can buy merch from her. I'm like, look, bless her. she created a cottage industry for herself, and it really is something.
In many ways, she's like the original Kardashian, famous for nothing, just for, being this interesting, beautiful person. But she's this big buxom, like she's got big titties, and her billboards are iconic. Like anyone who's ever seen one, they know immediately who it is. They're just very, very iconic. So, okay. So Marc Jacobs, fashion designer, things of that ilk, right? So he has designed lots of things referencing, different times in pop culture and icons and things like that. Well, he recently designed a bag. And on the bag is basically Angelyne. It is a buxom woman, like in her stereotypical pose, like she would sit on her cars. And, there's no mistake. You look at it and you know that it was a direct copy of one of her billboards, basically, right?
Yeah.
So he's in some hot water because celebrities are like calling him out and they're being like, how is this not a direct copyright infringement? Like you basically took this woman's image, you took this iconic billboard and you basically put it on your bag that you're now selling for thousands of dollars. Are you giving her any kind of royalty or any kind of money, or did you pay her for the rights to use her image? And the answer has basically been no. So all these celebrities are like, she needs to fucking sue his ass, and he needs to recall these bags because this is totally wrong. This is so fucked up. And part of it, I think, is that the celebrities are like, listen, this woman is not a celebrity in the sense that she has millions of dollars sitting in a bank account somewhere. She's not rich, even though she's famous. She doesn't have a shit ton of money. And for you then to take her image and to take her brand and to make thousands of dollars off it is just immoral. So all kinds of celebrities have been speaking out against him and being like, this is fucked up, knock this shit off. And they've been encouraging her to sue him.
So something similar happened a few years ago, and we talked about it here on the show, about a homeless guy in Los Angeles who used to roller skate around with headphones on.
Okay, yep.
And there's a section of Los Angeles on the border between Beverly Hills and West Hollywood. That was where I used to live when I lived in Southern California before I left. That was the area that I lived in. And it's kind of it's Los Angeles, and then it's West Hollywood, and it's Beverly Hills, and it's all right next to each other.
Right.
And it's not it's like a upper middle classy area. It's not like a wealthy area or anything, but It's like a lot of shops and some single family homes and a few 4-unit apartment buildings and that kind of thing around there.
Right.
But there's a lot of high-end restaurants in that area that are a lot of Hollywood types hang out there. There's art galleries and that kind of thing. Anyway, but there's a lot of wealthy people who drive around in that area because it's very drivable. And so he was roller skating around, and somebody made T-shirts. So one of these little shops was making T-shirts with his image on it and everything. And but that was a thing where I think they said that they did approach him and got him to sign his rights away for this merch. And the merch exploded. It was all the T-shirts were everywhere, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And he was somebody who had struggled with some mental health issues and was homeless and whatever else. And his family members found out, and they were like, basically you got him to sign this thing where you paid him, $500, and then you're making, hundreds of thousands of dollars off of this merchandise, right, and he's still homeless. A lot of people were very uncomfortable about it,
right,
because they didn't feel like he was at all equitably sharing in the money that was being made on his behalf. And my guess is that it is a very similar situation here of you didn't even get permission from her. And so, why are you making money off of somebody when, everybody knows, exactly to your point.
Right.
Angelyne is not a billionaire. She's a woman who's been, and
right,
her wealthy man friend have been self-financing her celebrity for 50 years.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, obviously, if you want to make something with her image on it, you got to license it. Of course you do.
Yeah. That only
It's
makes
shady.
sense. So shame on Marc Jacobs. That's what I have to say. Shame on you for taking advantage of this woman and her brand. It's really shitty, and you should know better.
All right. Well, there's no shame in the game here on Derek and Romaine. Thanks so much for listening to another A+ episode of this show. Be sure to tell your friends that they can subscribe to Derek and Romaine. Hear our antics every weekday at dnrstudios.com and in the DNR Cast app, available for Apple and Android.
Can't get enough of the show? Follow them on Twitter at DNR Show or like them on Facebook.
And don't forget to tell your friends to subscribe to DNR 2.0 at derekandromaine.com.